Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Deck, and if you enjoy talking about TV in any way, shape or form, you're going to feel right at home here. In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the entire first season of Netflix's Space Force.
When I was a child, our country put a man on the moon. We're going back. How many times do I need to apologize?
So Space Force was a show that I was looking forward to. I think that on concept alone, the cast, the talent behind it, I was pretty excited to see how the show was going to end up. And now that I've binged through all 10 episodes, I'm very interested to hear your thoughts, because for me personally, I think this show, overall, while I enjoyed it, it's definitely a bit of a mixed bag. Let's start off with the cast. Of course, we have a huge ensemble cast here, and I specifically want to focus on three people. Firstly, John Malkovich absolutely steals this series. He's basically the co-lead alongside Steve Carrell, and he is just fantastic throughout this entire series. So funny, so well performed, and also what I like about him is that he's the most consistently funny character throughout the entire series, just because the way he delivers his lines, the way he takes the dialogue, it's done in such a deadpan way most of the time that just him saying anything can be taken kind of comedically, just because of how deadpan his character is. Tawny Newsome, who I'd never heard of before, was really a standout for me in this series. I really liked her character. I thought she was an awesome addition to the series. She was one of the only characters in the series who actually felt like an actual character rather than a caricature, and I also really enjoyed her performance, her connections with the other characters, and her importance within the overall series, which I didn't expect to be as big of a role as it was. And Ben Schwartz was also a big standout for me. I really enjoyed his character in this. He's very annoying, but annoying in an endearing way. He's written in that way, and his character being this PR savvy kind of social media guy, he just kind of comes across as this really young millennial who is just completely different in the room to everyone else, and I think he really stands out and has some of the funnier lines in the series. And with this being a Netflix series, of course the budget is incredibly high, and that allows for the production value to also be incredibly high. I think when you look at the CGI in this show, it's absolutely fantastic. There's a particular scene with this CGI monkey which looks incredible. There's a CGI dog which looks great. There's also a lot of space scenes, and also the actual set of Space Force, the actual Space Force building, looks amazing. Like, it's a fantastic set, and it's an awesome place to be in. I really enjoyed just being in that environment, and it looks great. I think for a Netflix series, and also for this being like not necessarily a sci-fi series, as a typical sci-fi series, it genuinely did impress me in terms of its CGI and its set design and its production value overall. And what makes Space Force very enjoyable is it's a very easy binge. As someone who isn't exactly the best binger in the world and someone who doesn't love binging, I was able to binge through this series very, very quickly. I think that each episode, there's only 10 episodes, each one's only half an hour long, so it's a very easy binge. You can get through it in about 5 hours, and it's a really nice watch. And even as someone like me who, I'm going to get into my negatives in a second, someone who at some points was struggling with the series, I couldn't really put it down because it was just very, very easy to binge and very, very watchable. So as I said, I do have a few issues with the series. Initially, I think the first 3 to 4 episodes are really difficult to get through and take a while to get going. I think it takes a while for this show to really find its footing and to really understand what it's trying to do and what it's trying to be. And I don't think the series even really gets to that definitive point by the end of it. I still think by the end of season 1, this series is still not completely aware of what it wants to do. But those first initial episodes, it's really evident that the show is just struggling to get its identity, and I found that a bit of a struggle because it keeps jumping into different things and it keeps trying to do different comedy styles. And for me personally, especially those first 2 episodes in particular, episode 2 really is the one that stands out to me. They were honestly really bad and really difficult to get through for me personally, and I was really struggling with this series initially because I just thought, well, I don't know if this is what I want from a comedy series. I don't know if this is what I want it to do. But as I said, because it was so easy to binge and I couldn't really put it down, I kept going with it, and luckily it did get better as the series goes on, but initially it is a bit of a struggle. It can often drag in places as well, especially again in those initial episodes. I think the quality of the show overall massively improves as it goes on, but those first initial episodes can drag, and I think it's just because the show isn't necessarily that funny. I don't think the show, comedy-wise, is the most funny show out there, and given the fact that this is Steve Carell and Jeff Daniels, there's obviously going to be a lot of expectation from this, as these are, of course, the guys who made The Office US, which is one of the most popular comedic shows of all time. While I'm not necessarily a fan of The Office US, I'm a lot more of a fan of the original Office from the UK. Obviously, The Office US is insanely popular, and people adore adore that show. So people are going to go into this with a lot of expectations. And even I myself, as someone who's not really a fan of The Office, I still had some level of expectation for this. And it just, again, I didn't really find it that funny. It's not completely unfunny. Like, there are a lot of moments that did make me laugh. I'd definitely say I laughed a couple times in each episode, but there's nothing laugh out loud for me in this really. There's a lot more just chuckles or light laughs. There isn't really anything huge in this show, and I feel like that the lack of comedy in the show might disappoint people. And because it isn't very funny, I think those initial episodes, when you're kind of, again, almost expecting it to be a straight out comedy, I think can almost drag because it can seem a bit boring. And with the humor, I think the humor is a bit weirdly done in the show because, again, this is, again, talking about the initial episodes, because, again, this kind of ebbs away as the series goes on. But those initial episodes, there is a lot of really outdated and really in poor taste jokes that just kind of shocked me that they were actually in the script. Like, I can't believe that these actually got in there. There's a lot of racist jokes, there's a lot of misogynistic jokes, a lot of gender jokes, and, you know, while it's not necessarily a bad thing, because obviously you can make jokes about whatever you want, but it just feels like for a show like this, and for the times that we live in now, it feels very backwards for a show like this to be making jokes about those things, and I found it a bit uncomfortable and a bit cringy because they are so on the nose. Like, they're not very intelligently written, they're very forceful, and for a show like this, you know, called Space Force, which is essentially parodying a real-life thing like the SpaceX program and stuff like that, you know, something that's very topical and very modern, to have jokes like that in the show felt very backwards and very, you know, sort of the opposite of progressive, which I found very strange. And again, it does ebb away as the series goes on, and it sort of maybe the writers realize that's not what they should be doing. But in those initial episodes, it can be very cringy and, again, kind of uncomfortable at times because some of these jokes were just too on the nose and borderline offensive that I was a bit uncomfortable watching them. But overall, with all my negatives for Space Force, and, you know, I was actually, in those initial episodes, I thought, oh, this isn't good, I'm not going to like this. But I couldn't put it down. The series I couldn't drop. You know, there wasn't a point where I was like, oh, I'm done with this series, because it's so short episodes and there's not really that many of them. It's a very easy binge. You can get it done in a day, no problem, and you can get it done in half a day. It's absolutely no problem. And once I stuck with the show, I kept going with it, and I think once you get to episode 4, the series does pick up quite significantly, and then it becomes very enjoyable and very easy to watch and binge. I think the comedy picks up, I think the characters pick up, and I think that it becomes a lot more of an enjoyable series as you get a bit more invested in the story and the characters. And I think overall, I reflect positively on Space Force. I do think it's a decent series. I think it was a decent start. Again, those initial episodes are a real struggle. I think they are poorly done. I think the comedy is really poor in them. But I think when it comes to the series overall, I do reflect positively on it, and I do think it is a decent series. I'm very excited for Season 2. I want to see what they do with it. And I think that for a first series of this particular show, it's not the worst start I've ever seen. So with that said, I'm going to give Space Force a 3 out of 5. As I said at the beginning, I think this is a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to a series. I think that for a comedy series, it just struggles for a while to find its feet, and even by the end of the series, I still don't think it fully knows what identity it wants to have. But it does have a better idea at the end than it does at the beginning, and by the end, I think if you're like me, you will reflect positively on the series overall. So have you guys seen Space Force? If you have, make sure to let me know all your thoughts about it in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy it or did you hate it? I've seen a lot of mixed reviews for this show, so make sure you leave your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, guys, if you want to see more TV reviews and TV related videos just like this one, be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any uploads from me, and I hope to see you guys again next time.